morning. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for coming to our session today on the i-Portunus call for the artist mobility for architecture. My name's i-Portunus, and with my colleagues Katie Lowry and Leona Cully, we're going to take you through today's session around this call for artist mobility. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. If you don't mind turning your camera off just during the presentation, we were recording today, we'll have you muted for that purpose as well. But you can turn the camera back on at the end for the time, but we have loads of times for questions. It just kind of makes it a little bit easier to have only the presenter on for the presentation. And regarding questions, we will have time at the end, but also we will be moderating. So if you wanted to send questions as you think of them during the presentation, we'll gather them all up at the end and we can open it up then for a bit of a chat. So as I said, we're from the Creative Europe Desk Ireland, the Culture Office. And before we get into the kind of nuts and bolts of this award or this funding opportunity, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the broader context of architecture in the context of Creative Europe, the programme, and kind of how the Commission is focusing on architecture for the next couple of years. So the Creative Europe programme, the new programme will be launched in April this year, 2021, and it will run until 2027. And within that, there will be a launch of the sector-specific priorities where the Commission or the programme will focus on particular sectors in the culture realm. And one of those is architecture. And so within that call, they will be looking at areas to support, such as capacity building in the sector, the international career of the architect. They'll be looking at co-creation, design and planning, and other areas. They're just a couple of the areas of focus. So the Commission, again, has also focused on architecture through its new European Bauhaus movement. And this is looking at kind of the European project, really in terms of environment, design, architecture, and the future, looking at kind of smart living. So there'll also be, at the moment, they've launched that movement a couple of weeks ago. You're probably well aware of it. And they're looking at a design kind of submission stage at the moment, but they'll also be launching an award through that movement. And we'll have more details about that in April. So just, it all kind of ties back again to the Green Deal really being a huge area of focus for the European Commission. And architecture is really in the middle of that focus. So it's a really interesting time in terms of architecture. And again, we have this new award with its focus on architecture. But in particular, if this is for an individual artist mobility. So with Creative Europe, the programme, most of the calls work in conjunction with organisations who have the capacity to deliver projects, and artists and cultural practitioners are funded within those projects, but there is no specific individual artist award. So this is good to see where artists and architects and cultural practitioners can get funding for a mobility award. So just to jump into the award itself, who is it for? As I said, it's open to architects and cultural professionals active in the field of architecture. You must be 18 years over. It is open to people of all education qualifications and levels of experience. You must be legally residing in a Creative Europe country. Ireland is one of those countries, and for the full list, in case you want to just double check the full list of the Creative Europe countries, the countries that participate in the programme, you can look at the i-Portunus website, which we'll send you links to that during the presentation. So for this call, the UK are eligible to apply. This is a part of the end of a pilot scheme which started in 2018, and they've run 3 calls. So this is the very end of that as part of the last programme at the end of the 2020 budget. So the UK are eligible still for this call. The call, as I said, is for individuals, but it's also for groups up to 5 people, which is great. We will talk a little bit about a group application now in a moment, and what you need for that. And what is the actual this award for? So it's for the purpose of international collaborations, production residencies, or professional development. And the award will partially fund the cost of travel, transportation, accommodation to another Creative Europe country, or a few countries within the Creative Europe programme. And it is for continuous or segmented trips. So each trip must last a minimum of 5 days, but overall the total must be between 7 and 60 days. So we will talk, obviously there's a big elephant in the room, and that is COVID-19. We're all well aware of this, and we'll touch on that in a moment, just in case you think we are just launching into this mobility award and they haven't made any consideration for COVID. Of course they have. So we'll touch on that in a moment. So first, the objectives of the Mobility Award. So it's looking at international collaboration, so working in conjunction or in a framework of an international project with other collaborators, with other partners. It is for production-oriented residencies, for example. You could research on the spot or develop new designs in relation to a certain social and physical environment that you might find in another European country or countries. It is also for professional development. So you could take part in network meetings, showcases, workshops, masterclasses, or other training outside of formal education. So how to apply the kind of the practicalities of this? It's got its own website, so i-Portunus.eu. We'll send that through the chat as well to you, so you have it to hand. You will be creating an online account for this for yourself, and you will be asked for personal details, education, work experience, and then more details about your planned mobility, the dates, the destinations, you know, how you're going to get there. And then a little more in detail about the project, the description, the need for mobility, your preparation before this project, and the impact it will have on your practice. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, your actual project. And because this is a pilot, they do want some feedback on the application process. They're still kind of learning from experiences and feeding back into the future calls for i-Portunus. So the documents you will need for your application: you will need a 1-page CV. You will need an artist CV or a portfolio, artistic CV, with relevant details, images, and other kind of examples of your work. You will also need relevant documents supporting your mobility plan. So different documents could work here: invitation letters, meeting confirmations, contracts with institutions, partners, etc. You'll need to sign a declaration of honour, and this, it sounds quite kind of gloomy or a bit scary, but it's only to say that you are you don't fall within the exclusion criteria, and the exclusion criteria are that you don't work in cooperation, or you're not working for the people who are the group of institutions that are running this award, i-Portunus. So they are the Goethe Institute, the Institut Français in Paris, or the Izlatia in the Ukraine. So you're obviously not working in cooperation with any of those partners of the consortium. And just to confirm that the Institut Français is in Paris, but you could be working with another, collaborating with another Institut Français outside of Paris, and that would be fine. And just for kind of planning details, they provide on the i-Portunus website a link to a website that has a database called Trans Artists. And these have details of previous hosts who hosted i-Portunus recipients, and organizations that hosted i-Portunus recipients before. So what kind of projects? So what we're kind of saying is that you would use this time or this project as a way to test ideas, to test processes and methodologies, but to also show that this is part of a plan of a bigger, broader picture in terms of your practice. It might lead to more collaboration, long-term impacts on your career. So I suppose basically they just don't want this to be a kind of once-off, jolly where you go and plan to meet up with other architects or collaborators, but it's actually really embedded in your practice, and it's really well planned, and it will have impact on your practice. So it's very open. The scope is quite wide, which is great. But I suppose like areas such as urban, rural design, planning, building processes, architecture conservation, community sustainability, and green projects are all kind of areas of interest for this award. But if you have obviously a project or a proposal in it, something totally different, but with an architectural kind of grounding in it, you can just make your case. And as long as you can show that it has kind of impacts on your career, that it does have to take place on an international collaboration, even if that is a blended version of it, that it's not just based in a national context. So looking at the group mobility, the group can, as I said, up to 5 people can apply, and one person will apply on behalf of the group. So all the CVs and all those documents will go together through that one person and through their online account. The group can come from and return to different countries. They can travel to the same country of destination, and where possible, they will arrive and leave at the same time, where possible, obviously, but just that the mobility has to focus on one single group project, so that people within the group aren't just kind of firing off to different countries and working on different parts of something that isn't really a congealed group project. And there again, the funding will only be for people who actually partake in the mobility. So for those individual artists, architects, or cultural practitioners, they have to undertake a transnational mobility. So COVID-19, as we mentioned, they have definitely taken this into consideration, as this is a mobility award, and all mobility within Europe and elsewhere is kind of changing, ongoing, and we just don't know what the situation is going to be in June, when at the beginning of these mobility trips can start. So they've come up with 3 options to follow up with in the case that you cannot travel, or you need to change your plan due to changes in travel. So you can postpone the mobility until November 2021, and the last date of return in November is the 30th of November. Or you can change the destination up to 10 days before travel, which is kind of handy if it looks like there's a kind of green pathway between Ireland and another country other than the one that you had already looked at, just in terms of numbers for COVID cases, etc. You can change the travel, but the per diems will be based on original destinations. So the original destination in your application will be what the per diems is based on. So blended mobility is the other option, and this will be that you have an alternative plan. It's not a new proposal, it's just an alternative plan for a digital or blended version to achieve your proposal, to achieve your outcomes. And within that plan, they'd look for like a qualitative element of it, a tangible result. They could be designs, compositions, video recordings of discussions, or ongoing kind of collaborative outcomes, as long as you're achieving your outcomes that you proposed. And the amount that, if you are successful, the amount of money will be set as the original amount, which is great. As long as you can prove you will be able to achieve those outcomes. And what the i-Portunus team are advising is that you get in touch with them, and here's the email, we'll send you this as well, before you change your selected proposal to one of those 3 options that I mentioned. So the grantee would get in touch with them and just kind of clear it with them, just in case there are any other changes or they need to fill out a certain part of another form, etc. And just to say that they're so helpful. We were in touch with them confirming different details for the call, and they do really want to help, so that's great. So just looking at the budget, it's a fixed amount for €350 per person for the transport. Per diems are determined on a case-by-case basis, depending on the duration of your mobility and the number of overnight stays between the dates you arrive and you return. And obviously the destination is, the per diem is covered for the amount that is set out for that country. So again, within the i-Portunus or the documentation that you'll download for this application, they have a list of all the different countries in the Creative Year program, or that you can travel to, and the per diems, the relevant per diems per country. So Ireland is up there as a high cost of living at €80 per day, along with Denmark and Norway and other countries. And then there are lots of other countries who are at a lower per diem. So it just depends on what your project is, what your plan is, and where you want to go, and the per diem will be relevant to that. So overall, the total budget is €3,000 per person, all inclusive. And for this call, they've allocated €500,000, and they're expecting 250 projects to be funded. So again, we've mentioned some of these. Applicants need to apply on this i-Portunus.eu in English by the deadline, so make sure you get the right time. They are in Brussels as Central European time, not the same as Ireland, so just always remember the difference in the time. So the applications need to have all the information requested, including annex documentation. So I suppose just make sure you read through the guidelines. And as we said, this is open to architects and cultural practitioners in the field of architecture. You need to be 18 years upwards. You need to be a resident in a Creative Europe country. And your destinations, whether it's one country or a couple of countries, need to be in the Creative Europe country as well. So eligibility, the departure date must be on or after the 16th of June 2021, and the return date, the latest, is the 30th, on or before the 30th of November. So as we said, the length of the mobility should be between 7 and 60 days, including your travel days. And for this call, if you have received an i-Portunus mobility support before, you're not eligible. And artists with disabilities or creators and cultural professionals living with a disability, there are extra supports available. The applicant should self-declare this and their needs, their access needs, what that financially would mean for them, and that will be based on a case-by-case basis. You will be asked for receipts for those additional costs. And what I'd say there is actually probably the best is to get in touch with the i-Portunus team as well, just to make sure you're ticking the right box, you're self-declaring in the right kind of part of the application form. Just to make sure you get it right. So yeah, the evaluation of the applications, this is very transparent, as is everything through the Creative Europe programme. They will have 2 independent expert evaluators, obviously in this area of within architecture. They break it down to relevance and necessity, the extent to which the mobility will assist you in achieving your outcomes. So kind of that, how important is this actual international collaboration to your outcomes? The preparation and the feasibility, so the extent to which the project has been well planned in advance and is kind of solid with you and collaborators or partners. And outcomes, what you aim to achieve as a result, and how that is really important, how that's going to impact your trajectory or your practice. So the i-Portunus dates, just to sum up what ones to keep your eye on. So the submission is the 14th of March. As I said, it's Central European time, so it's 1800 hours, so 6 o'clock in the evening. Then the notifications of your results will be by the 16th of April. The earliest date of departure is the 16th of June, as we said, and the latest return is the 30th of November. We do have another i-Portunus briefing, if it is of any interest, in music and heritage next month in March. So we'll know the date soon for that. And just to look at the statistics from Ireland for the last 3 calls of the pilot. So 1 out of every 6 applications were funded. And the areas of practice were theatre, visual arts, dance, curatorial practice. And the countries visited were Serbia, Germany, Portugal, Denmark. And our latest publication we have up on our website. We can send you that link, where we have case studies from the overall programme 2017 to 2020. And within that, we have some nice i-Portunus projects featured. So again, looking forward, as I said at the outset, that the new Creative Europe, the programme will be launched in April. And within that, there'll be a call announced for architecture as part of the sector-specific focus, and looking again, capacity building, co-creation and design, planning and building processes, and the international career of the architect. We also have an architectural-based event from the desk for ourselves. We're going to have one around Creative Europe and our architecture, so looking at different projects that have been funded through Creative Europe programme. We will look at the new European Bauhaus movement and the launch of the award for that. And we'll be working in conjunction with the architecture team within the Arts Council around their policy in the area. So that will be in April 2021. And we also have a heritage event in May 2021. So busy time. So that is the end of just the practicalities of it. And I might stop the presentation, and myself and Katie and Leona can come back on. If there are any questions, you're free to turn on your cameras if you want to, or else, yeah, otherwise you'll be sending questions through the chat because we won't be able to see you.
Okay, well, I take a few questions first from the chat and then we can ask the, sorry. So someone just wanted to clarify that is the call solely focused on individual artists and cultural practitioners, or can an organization apply?
I don't think so in this. One person from an organization could apply, or up to 5 people as a kind of group, but I don't think a full organization. I'd need to double check that. What do you think, Katie?
I think I've heard, and this is kind of conjecture and can't be necessarily confirmed, but I heard there might be scope for that within the permanent action, that a host could kind of, there could be a host organization, or an organization could be inviting artists over. But for the purposes of this call, I think it's intended for individual artist mobility. So if you were, you know, a company or an organization, you essentially would be putting forward an individual to make the application. while obviously the plan could kind of have a benefit back to your organization, for the purposes of this, it's for individual artists' mobility. That's my understanding anyway.
Okay, good. And another question here, can the fund cover production cost if I build a prototype abroad?
No, I think that the funds are definitely for transport and your per diems, where your accommodation, where you're staying, and a daily rate, and that's it. It's not, even though it's for residencies, it's not to fund the production within the residency. It's to fund the residency, if you know what I mean.
Okay, good. And then someone has a question about they are clinically extremely vulnerable and will be unlikely to travel abroad this year. How does it work financially for a 100% virtual partnership?
I don't know, do you want to? My understanding, you know, and it is the elephant in the room is, you know, making an application for physical travel at a time when no one is physically traveling. So in your case, you know, really what they say is the issue is that the outcomes of your proposal, so what you're saying you're going to achieve, remain the same. And in that case, in your case, a virtual mobility, it wouldn't affect your funding. So you're making the application, you know, it has to be made, and whether, you know, what you want to say about that, but you make the application based on physical travel with a set of kind of in your proposal kind of outcomes to that mobility. If and when the case being that you cannot travel, and so that the mobility becomes entirely virtual, you'll need to demonstrate that the outcomes can be achieved, and then your funding won't be affected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. And then can you name the countries which are listed as Creative Europe countries? So I can post a link to that.
Yeah.
I think that's very long. Yeah.
So it's actually 41 countries, I think, now that the UK is still included. So it would be all the accession countries, the candidate countries for membership, the European Economic Area. So, you know, Iceland, Norway. So it's very broad. You know, it goes as far as Georgia is included as a country. So really, Leona will send you the link and you can look there.
I think that also answers the question about, is mobility limited to those host countries' institutes? So they would have to be in the Creative Europe countries,
Yeah.
isn't that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And does the UK remain in the list of possible countries? Just to clarify, you said
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are you aware if an i-Portunus call about interaction or service design will ever be released?
Service design, I haven't come across it, unless within the new program, as Katie said, this is going to be a permanent action. They might introduce, you know, other areas in the sectors that for focus for this award. So yeah, it could come up, but I haven't heard of it.
Okay.
I think the intention, I think when it came as a pilot, the budget was kind of somewhat limited. And then the decision was made to kind of limit, I guess, the sectors covered. There is the hope that in the next program, because there will be some more funding, that it could be broad and things like design could be included. So theoretically, all the sectors covered within Creative Europe could hopefully be covered under i-Portunus.
Okay. Can multiple 5-person groups apply with the same international project, or what if the groups divide up the program into different parts? So the same overall theme and destination, but different parts of it for different groups.
I think if it's up to 5 people, so 5 people within one group, it has to be one group project. And you all have to go to the same country at this, more or less, give or take a day, or, you know, as much as possible to the same country. You could be working in smaller details within that project, but it has to be the same project.
And I think, you know, maybe I'm reading this wrong. So, you know, this is very limited funding, and it's funding specifically, you know, for travel costs. If you're talking about kind of a broader partnership or project, you know, that's something separate. So, you know, there is a way that you could actually probably work it from each person's kind of point of view, or each group, you know, making their own application with their own rationale as part of a much broader collaboration or idea. But for the purposes of this award, it's about your individual or your group mobility and the limited outcome from this specific mobility. So I think, you know, you could be strategic about it, but you have to understand you're speaking to, you know, the guidelines for this award.
Okay. And does the budget breakdown need to be submitted as part of the application, and how detailed is it expected to be?
Within the budget, it's fairly basic in terms of, there's, as we said at the beginning, there's your 300 for your transport, 2,650 for your per diems. So I guess you give the details that are required to prove the costs for that. So your flights, your if there's train journeys, that kind of thing, and then within your per diems, your breakdown of the days. So the exact amount of days, then overnight stays within, because it could be a couple of different countries. So you just have to prove those kind of amounts to match up with the budget. So they're not looking for flight booking, reservation orders, or confirmations or anything like that. It's just your breakdown in those kind of terms.
Okay, good. And then I'm not 100% sure if you clarified this already, but someone wanted a clarification. So if funders accept a 100% virtual partnership and my outcomes aren't affected, or per diems, would it be the same as if I was physically traveling?
So that is what they're saying, you know, that, and you can, I think Leona shared the link, but that's what they say within the, the COVID guidelines. So the issue is that the project outcomes remain the same, and then, you know, your grant is not affected. I think the idea for this is that it's flat rate financing with very little oversight. So the funding is actually tied to the outcomes. So it's not like you have to submit a huge amount of receipts or anything. You just have to demonstrate that you did what you said you'd do. So we sought clarification, and that was clarified.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Can one person apply with two different projects? For example, with one individual project to the UK and another as a member of a group to another country?
I'd need to clarify that actually, because essentially they're two different applications, two different projects. It sounds like it could be eligible, but I'd have to check that.
I think, you know, as well, you have to look at the fact that, you know, there'll probably be quite a demand on this award. So you kind of think, would they actually fund the same individual twice? I mean, if you're a member of a group, you know, that could be something different. And we'll email i-Portunus and get clarification, but I would say you need to kind of think about the potential demand on the award and maybe possibly prioritize for this round the one that's most important to you.
Okay, that's very clear. Someone has a question about flights. If I have more flights to take and my flights cost is over 350 euros, can I ask for more money, or will I need to cover that cost myself?
So it's a partial fund. It's partially going to cover both the per diems and so it has a cap at 300. So no, if your costs are over that, you will have to fund it yourself.
Okay. I'm not sure I don't think I missed any, but keep asking, or feel free to turn on your cameras and mics if anyone else has a question.
Let's see. Yeah, I suppose the other thing is that just to remember, as we were saying through the presentation, that this opportunity, I suppose there's a month left to the application deadline, so it's not giving you a huge amount to start from scratch a project, and that's, in a way, that's kind of good, because I think, as we were saying, they'll look favorably on applications that have been well planned, that are embedded in your practice, that are part of an overall plan, you know, of a work that you are undertaking already, I mean, this might be a test area, but you're definitely working in this direction anyway. You might have worked with this collaborator before, or this partner, you know, so it is, in a way, it's a short amount of time to get your application in, but also we're hoping that you are kind of, this something is in train already. And this is just the time to kind of pull it together now for you in your practice.
Okay, I think that might be, yeah. Oh, there's one new message, hold on. Will there be future calls for this award for i-Portunus?
Yeah, so we were saying there that this was a pilot. So now they've kind of gathered all their results and their feedback. So they've put it together and made it a permanent call. So it'll be announced as part of the next Creative Europe program, which will be launched in April. So it'll run as part of that suite of funding opportunities, which is great.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't know the full details. There could be slight tweaks, slight changes, slight additions, more money. You don't know, but we can, as I said, we'll be doing a full launch event in April, so we can talk more again about the details around the permanent call for i-Portunus. And I guess if we're finishing up there on the questions, as I said, we'll be recording, we are recording, and we can send you the recording of this event. We'll send you the PDF from the presentation, and we can send you the links we were talking about there to the website for making your own account, for the i-Portunus website itself, with all those details about the per diems, the countries, from the Creative Year program. And as I said, do get in touch with the i-Portunus team. We'll send you their email. If you have any queries, they're really responsive. And if you don't hear anything from them, get in touch with us, and we can kind of, we can negotiate it. I think is that one more?
Yeah, there is. I'm just posting the link then to our website, and people can sign up for a newsletter just so that they get updates on all this Creative Year funding calls and the new program. So the question, yeah, so can a collaborator travel from different regions within a country, or must you leave your home country entirely?
I think you have to leave your home country.
Yeah, you could do both. Yeah, as long as you left the country as well.
I think there's what the funding itself, covers, which is kind of transnational or, travel across borders and exchange, international exchanges. But really, this is only part of, the collaboration that's going to happen, within this mobility. So I think, for your point, there might be a number of collaborators, say within Ireland or another country, and then you might be meeting or working together here, but that's not necessarily what you're getting funding for. But it does, I think it does strengthen your application, because you're showing that this partnership and this collaboration exists outside of, the funding itself. It's not a marriage of convenience per se. It's that it's a real and deep collaboration and partnership. So all of those things, that you're saying there would add value to your proposal, but that's not what you'd be getting funding for, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing with this award that is the real selling point is that it's very flexible. It's very adaptable to, your organization's kind of longer term plans. And it's very, very simple in terms of kind of budgeting. So this is a real opportunity. And I think, we've heard from people here in Ireland that have got it, and they've all found it very fantastic. So it's definitely something to consider. That's our pitch.
Yeah, that's our motto. Well, we might leave it on that positive pitch note. And thanks a million for coming today. I hope it was informative. As I said, we'll keep you in touch, and Leona's put the link up for the newsletter, but we'll be getting in touch with you for our other events coming up. And do get in touch if you don't hear back from the i-Portunus team. We can help you out there. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.
Okay.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.